What's up guys, it's Alex here, your friendly reef dog. Now, since I did my last video, top 5 beginner reefing mistakes, I have been quite literally inundated with a question. And that question is, if buying beginner corals is such a schoolboy error, what corals should beginners buy? Well, I'm glad you asked because it gives me the opportunity to stop people buying boring corals. Let's have a look. Now when I say boring corals, I'm talking about the likes of leathers and mushrooms. Corals that are as beige as they are hardy. They are the epitome of beginner corals because they are nigh on impossible to kill. But the trade-off is that they are just so dull. And in a hobby with so much colour and variety, you don't have to compromise that much. Now it is possible to have an awesome natural looking tank with that type of coral, but tanks like that are very much the exception and are only likely to look great if they've been put together by an experienced hobbyist. Now all of the corals on my list are still beginner friendly. They're hardy, forgiving of imperfect water chemistry and fluctuations, and they don't require strong light or flow. And yet, I reckon you'll still be as happy with them 2 years down the line as you are on day one. So here's my top 7 list. Number 7 is GSP. No, not George St. Pierre Green Star Polyps. This is a gorgeous soft coral that really comes to life under blue LEDs where the colours pop and fluoresce. And that for me is one of the most magical parts of this hobby. GSPs are readily available and are usually very cheap, and because it doesn't have a hard skeleton, it won't drain your calcium and alkalinity quickly. The only real downside is that it is a fast grower. I mean, you can practically see it spreading in front of your eyes. So you do have to choose placement carefully, and you might want to consider isolating it on an island so it doesn't take over your rockscape. Now because it's an encrusting coral, it's a great option to have on the back glass of your tank, something YouTuber Dutch Reefer has done to great effect. Number 6 is Blastomussa or Blastos. This is one of only 2 stony corals on my list, and as such, as they grow, they will deplete calcium, alkalinity and other elements from your water to make their skeletons, so you will need to replace what they use. But with corals like this, you'll be able to do that with water changes only, and you shouldn't need to invest in a full dosing setup. This is another coral that glows nicely under blue LEDs, and you even get a bit of colour variety, with purple and green or red and green options available. And unlike many LPS corals, it doesn't have stinger tentacles, so you don't have to worry about it declaring war on its neighbours. Number 5 then is another stony coral, Lobophyllia, and this is an absolute stunner. They have interesting patterns and a great range of colours, and for me it's a real wow factor coral, one your friends will gawk at when you show them your tank. Now these do have stinging sweeper tentacles, so you'll need to make sure they're not in range of other corals or they could damage or kill them. And they're certainly not cheap. You can easily spend north of £100 on one of these, but it's a coral you'll never get bored of staring at, and one that will absolutely justify its price tag in the long term. Number 4 on my list is Clove Polyps. Now the mere mention of those words will strike fear into the hearts of some experienced reefers. The reason being is that it is a very fast growing soft coral and could even be described by cynical reefers as invasive. But, I mean, come on, look how pretty they are. And because they grow on stalks, they sway in the flow, which adds another dimension to an already stunning coral. If you isolate them on an island, you might just get away without them spreading too far, although I would say isolation doesn't guarantee they won't spread. Sometimes life, finds a way. Number 3 is pulsing Xenia, another potentially invasive but beautiful soft coral. The pink-purple colour is gorgeous, it sways in the current, adding movement to your reef, and, as the name suggests, the polyps themselves pulse gently and independently of each other. You honestly won't get bored of watching that ever. It's truly mesmerising. This particular coral was from my first tank. It grew to this size from a golf ball sized frag in a matter of months, and it is tricky to remove from the rock because it feels quite slimy, so it's hard to grip. But corals like this are the reason many people get into the hobby in the first place, and nothing else will pulse and sway so beautifully and peacefully. Just make sure you isolate it. The runner-up on my list is zoanthids, and these really are the co-main event of the evening. There must be more variety of colour in zoas than any other coral. They grow well, you can frag them for profit, they look fantastic in groups, and they look as good under blue lights as any coral. You do have to be selective with Zoas because there are dull ones out there. It's easy to see a large rock in your local fish shop covered in Zoas and think you're getting a bargain at £30. But the best way to get the very best look is to buy small frags of only a few heads each. They'll be cheap for the most part, although you can spend £150 per polyp if you're that guy, and they'll grow into good sized colonies in no time. Now there are loads of hobbyists out there who grow and sell Zoa frags at reasonable prices. There are some great places on Facebook, and you can get some gorgeous colours that way too. A favourite place of mine is Fragging Mad. They put together packs as well as selling single frags, and they post all over Europe. If you spend a bit of time finding your favourites, you'll end up with a bright and varied coral garden that can be a centrepiece of your reef. Now this is one coral you absolutely must dip before it goes in your tank. For the sake of a few minutes work, you can avoid yourself the risk of an infestation of Zoa eating nudipranks. However, many Halichores wrasses eat nudies, so getting Zoas is a nice excuse to load your tank up with wrasses, one of my favourite kind of fishes. And now to the main event of the evening. Number one on my list is rock flower anemones, and frankly these could be top of any list regardless of difficulty. They are absolutely stunning, and one of my favourite marine animals full stop. Now I'm cheating slightly here because anemones aren't actually corals, but they absolutely slam home the whole point of this videos. Beginner tanks don't have to be boring. Now unlike many anemones, rock flower nems are very hardy. In fact they can probably fairly be described as bomb-proof. The colours are endless and are just so vivid and bright too. They have fascinating contours, and because they love nothing more than cuddling up to each other, you can create the most beautiful garden of nems. They don't require strong light or flow, and they won't soak up calcium, alkalinity and so on. So what's not to like? Well, they aren't cheap. You can expect to pay the thick end of £100 for a good one, but they are a spectacular addition to any tank, and they'll reward your investment with their beauty. They also form symbiotic relationships with sexy shrimp and porcelain crabs who use them as a home and for protection. If there's a more beautiful, interesting, easy to keep animal in this hobby, I'm yet to see it. So there's my top 7 list. If you think I've missed any, stick them in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed the video, why not subscribe and hit that bell for future content. And in the meantime, check out some of my other videos. Till next time then, I have been the Reef Talk. Thank you, good night.